Debbie Seller, and I am the head librarian of the Rio Grande Campus Library. And I am so pleased that you guys were able to actually come out and stay for this event that we did in collaboration with our art gallery. So let me go ahead and get started. I have some comments that I actually wrote down, so I don't want to leave anything out. So some of this I'm going to read. So sorry if you just see the top of my head. Um, can you guys hear me okay? Or does it need to be louder? Test, test. Is that better? Okay. So, welcome to the Necessity of Truth. This is a contribution to the National Day of Racial Healing. This occurs each year on the Tuesday following Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This event is dedicated to a bilingual publication that showcases the work of Central and South Texas artists. So, if you guys have not seen it, this is what it looks like right here. And we have a table with these books where Jordan has been handing these out to the students. Through interviews and artwork, these artists explored themes of racial healing, social justice, and cultural awareness to bring this book together. And before we dive into today's program, I would like to take a moment to recognize a few key individuals who have made this event possible. First, we are honored to have Peter Bonfitto, the director of ACC's Art Galleries and Exhibition Programming, with us today. If you want to just wave, Peter. Peter is going to share inspiration behind this publication and provide valuable insight into its creation process. Secondly, I want to acknowledge the partnership between Library Services and the Art Gallery in bringing this event to you. Please join me in recognizing faculty librarian Jordan Forbes Hagen. Jordan is in the blue. If we can give her a hand. Jordan has been instrumental in collaborating with Peter to bring this event to life, including developing both a physical traveling art display featuring a collection of books inspired by the necessity of truth and a virtual display. For more details about the traveling display, including its schedule, please reach out to Jordan after today's event. The display is actually going to go to all 11 campuses and it will be housed in the libraries. And you guys can check out all of the materials on those displays. And finally, I would like to express my gratitude to our Dean of Library Services, who's in the very back right there, Carrie Moxjemba, for her unwavering support. When I first approached Carrie about hosting this event 6 months ago, she provided encouragement and support every step of the way. So thank you, Carrie. I also want to let everyone know that Jordan and Gina are in the back and they are giving complimentary copies of the book for our students. Please feel free to visit the table at the conclusion of this event to take home your copy. And now I'm going to get started with Peter. I'm going to talk a little bit about Peter and then he's going to introduce our featured artist, Dave McClinton. Peter Bonfitto is the Director of Galleries and Exhibition Programming at the Art Galleries at Austin Community College. Often it's just called TAG for the Art Galleries. Since 2020, Peter has played a key role in developing ACC's gallery program, which manages 3 gallery spaces at the Highland campus, as well as creating online programming and events. He has curated a number of noteworthy exhibitions, including Food, Shelter, Water, projects by 4 Texas photographers, and Cultivating Community Through Art, Sam Coronado's Siri project and its continuing legacy. Before joining ACC, Peter worked at the Getty Research Institute in Los Angeles, California, where he co-curated Connecting Seas, a visual history of discoveries and encounters, and the online exhibition, The Legacy of Ancient Palmyra. At the Getty, Peter collaborated with scholars and artists on numerous projects related to annual research themes. Notably, he worked with Getty resident artist Richard Tuttle on the artist's book, You Never See the Same Color Twice. Peter served as managing editor and contributor. He's also taught art history and art appreciation at ACC and has lectured at the University of Texas at Austin. He is the lead author and editor of the publication World Architecture and Society, From Stonehenge to One World Trade Center. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Peter Bonfitto.
Hello. I just want to also say thank you to Debbie for creating this event and really going through all the different logistics it takes to pull off an event during the beginning part of a semester is always a especially challenging part. So I really appreciate that. And we are really thrilled on behalf of TAG to be partnering with the libraries in this project. It's been a long road of doing a lot of different things with this publication, and this is one of the really times that we can start to celebrate and enjoy the work that we've done, and really be able to put the book out in a new way to new audiences, which is essentially the whole purpose of the project. Now, before I go into discussing the book itself, I do want to, one, just talk a little bit about the galleries themselves, because I know not everyone is familiar with them. And so at Highland Campus, we have 3 gallery spaces. We have a gallery in Building 2000, where we have our contemporary print exhibition that's just opened. We also have a gallery in 4000, and we also have an art lab space. These spaces are free and open to the public for everyone, for students, faculty, staff, your friends, your neighbors. Bring people into the galleries. We're open Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And if you sign up for our newsletter, you're going to get lots of emails about, not too many emails. You'll get important emails that are strategically planned to allow you to come to our galleries at times that are not open, or normal open. So we have events like for Print Austin, we'll have a special event coming up. And we also, I want to highlight another artist talk that we're going to have with artist Delita Martin, who's a Houston-based artist that does really extraordinary work. We're very honored and lucky that she's going to come to ACC and give a talk. So that's coming up in a few weeks as well. So please join us at our events and come to our events over at Highland Campus. But this is really phenomenal for us to be able to come to Rio Grande, because we don't always do enough inter-campus programming, and so we really hope to be one of the parts of ACC to spearhead some of that, and so for other ACC campuses and programs, please come to us, and we want to collaborate. Okay, so today's talk. So I want to talk about the necessity of truth. This is a project that we started about 5 years ago. And so it's really kind of amazing to see the journey of this project. So I'm going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to try to talk relatively briefly just to give you an overview of what the book is about, how we organized it, how we got to the ebook that was released a few years ago, and then the hard copy, which was just printed this past summer. Because I want to give Dave more time to talk, because his work is really phenomenal, and I'm very happy that he's here today to discuss his work with us. So the book itself, designed as a bilingual Spanish and English book, this publication features artwork and interviews by Central and South Texas artists who explore themes of racial healing, social justice, and cultural awareness. The featured artists in the book show how artists channel their intellectual ideas and emotion into positive and meaningful works of art. Recent studies illustrate the importance of using visual art to challenge stereotypes and change attitudes about gender, race, and ethnicity. This book engages with the challenges of becoming a working artist of color, how to create a feeling of and sense of place in today's society, and demonstrates how artwork can be a vehicle for cultural critique. The necessity of truth is a resource for students to explore these complex issues in deep and meaningful ways. So it's a digital publication that can be found on our website at TAG, and it's also a print publication, which we've already talked about. The publication was really created in-house at ACC. We got so many different departments and people together to create this. So we utilized faculty, staff, student, and alumni expertise over multiple departments, including the art department, visual communications, ACC Spanish language translation and interpretation program, communications studies, and arts and digital media. The volume was written and edited by me, and the managing editor, who did an incredible job, was Kristen Calhoun, who is ACC Art Department faculty. The book's design was led by Rachel Wyatt, who's an ACC VisCom professor, and supported by Gina Woodruff, who's here today, who did an extraordinary amount of work to get the book into its print format, and she works with us at the gallery. Maddie George did additional graphic design, and Janine Lafranc, who is an ACC alumni and now works at the Carver Museum, was also really instrumental in the design. We have a scholarly introduction essay written by Philip Townsend, who's curator of art at the art galleries at Black Studies over at UT. And he's a really great collaborator. We've partnered with him on a number of projects. And so his introductory essay is part of the book. So this 4-year-long project started in 2020 during COVID, and the print version just came out this past summer. The real way we were able to do that was through a successful campaign of internal fundraising, which included getting an ACC Belonging and Purpose mini grant so that we could run 500 copies that could be free to students. We also ran our own fundraising initiative with the ACC Foundation. So I'll get more into that as we go, but I wanted to give you a basic outline of how we got the book created. So what I want to do now is look at some of the images in the book. And so we want to just kind of go through the first section here, just to give you an idea of how it's organized. So Taylor Barnes was one of the 6 artists that we featured. And so I'm just going to go through her section very quickly. And so what we decided to do is we wanted to put the artwork first. That was the curatorial decision for the book. We didn't want to start with text. We didn't want to start with biography. We wanted to start with images. We wanted to start with people getting a kind of a selection from each artist. So each artist has 5 images that we start with. These are Taylor's works. They're really phenomenal. They're large format charcoal works that she's created over a number of years. And so we have these really impactful images for each section. For each artist gets they're almost like a mini gallery. And then from there, we have really extraordinary portraiture that was done by Moyo Oyelola, who was a local photographer. He's now moved out of Austin, but he's an extraordinarily kind of amazing artist to work with. We worked on with different projects over time, and he went to each artist's studio and took photos of them. And so what we compared that with texts, quotes from the artists themselves, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then we also have companion sections of text that describe each artist. So we go images of the artwork, images of the artists, into quotes by the artist, and then some kind of supporting text. And in those sections, we include other artworks by the students, which include artworks, in this case, from Taylor when she was a student, when she was doing her graduate studies. And so long quotes, really giving them the space to explain. And obviously, everything is in Spanish and English, which is the entire book is bilingual. So that was Taylor's section. Now, I'm not going to do that for every artist because it's all in the book, but just some of the artists. We had Veronica Cardenas Vero, who is an artist that is a photojournalist that has gone with migrant caravans for a number of years and documented that. So we had photography as well. These are really extraordinary photographs that are in the book. We really, not only are they photographs, they are stories, and each of the captions really describe each story. Ame Everett is another one of the artists who does really wonderful portraiture work, very personal. And in her section, we also focused a little bit on process because she does really interesting work with different media. Luis Corpus is another one of the artists, and he does large-scale portraiture of Mexican-American youth. And he's from the Valley, and he teaches there. And so he does these really great portraits. And then Barbara Minaro was in San Antonio, has now moved to Austin. She is a textile artist that does really interesting work about space, the human body, that in many ways relates to migration and other topics. And then we have Dave McClinton, who's our artist that will be talking very shortly. And Dave's work is digital collage and digital focus. So I'll let him talk a little bit more. But that gives you a general idea of what's in the book, why we have these 6 sections. And then our 7th artist is Moyo, who took the photographs and really added a lot to the publication through the visual kind of connection you get by seeing each artist. And then I wrote the introduction as well as other parts, and then Philip over here on the right wrote a scholarly essay to contextualize all of the work in the book. So we really wanted to be comprehensive. And then I just show a few more slides. These are slides that show other projects that we did in relation to it. So after we did the book, we also did a companion video. I suggest you watch this. This is really wonderful because you hear the artists themselves talking. We did another exhibition, a physical exhibition. Once we were starting to come out of COVID, we did one with Dave and with Barbara. We paired their work in Gallery 4000. We did another exhibition with Vero and another group of artists called Food, Shelter, Water, which was a photography exhibition a few years ago. And then we also had invited Taylor and Luis to come back and give a talk. So we've maintained these connections. And so I see actually today's event as along this chain of things that we've done for a number of years with the book. And so, how did the project start? How did we continue it? Well, it really was a COVID era project. I took over the role of director in 2020. Obviously, that was not a normal business time. And we had to figure out, how do we get artwork to our students? How do we complete our mission? And so one of the ways that we decided to do that was turn what might have been an exhibition into a book project. Books are extraordinary amounts of work. We were a little lucky in the fact that we had time to work on all of these things. I don't think this book would have been made in other circumstances, which is good to kind of recognize. Trying to take good things out of challenging times. And so what did we want to do? We wanted to create a resource for students so they could see professional artists that had been thinking about topics of social justice, of race for years, and developed it in their artwork. And that was a way that we could provide students with new ideas, like how are people going to receive their artwork? Because we didn't want you don't want artworks about racial justice to be a homework assignment, right? It needs to kind of come from a different way. I mean, artworks in particular. You can write an essay, you can do all kinds of different things academically, but to create original new works of art, it's a meditative process, and I'm sure Dave will kind of illuminate on that a little bit too. So we conducted interviews with all the artists. This was early Zoom days, and we were doing that, and we recorded lots and lots of material with each artist. And that is basically what the book became. And then this is more just like technical after we got the digital volume done and we got to doing the print run. And I've kind of described that already a little bit. Because this is a co-event with the library, I figured people would forgive me if I showed the front matter of a book. And so this also shows like all of the different people. Let's see if I can get this pointer. All the different people that were involved. I don't know if you can see that, but when you get the book, it was a lot of, we had a great team of translators that worked on this book. They were phenomenal to work with. We had designers, we had project managers, authors, people going through images. We got interns involved in this, right? It was a really, a book that we worked with lots of different people. And then just kind of to wrap up, what made it a success? Well, we had exceptional content, which is the first thing to do, and that kind of drives everything else. You have really fantastic artworks with extraordinary quotes by artists. That keeps you going. And so we had a dedicated team, and then we had support, right? We had support from the college, we had support from some external partners, and those are the things that make everything kind of happen together. And this is my last slide, and this is just kind of a question that I posed while we were making the book, which is, how does a museum or gallery go beyond the physical walls of the space to reach a larger audience or to better complete its mission? And so we are an art gallery. but we also want to create other spaces, whether they're virtual, whether they're in book form, for people to interact with artworks. So thank you very much. And I will now introduce Dave. And we will do questions at the end. Excellent. Dave McClinton is an multidisciplinary artist who worked. I'm going to start over. I normally do these introductions at the beginning and not after I've been talking for a little while. Let's start again, Dave. I apologize. Dave McClinton is a multidisciplinary artist whose work explores the intersections of identity, history, and culture, with a focus on the Black American experience. Based in Austin, Texas, McClinton uses a combination of digital collage, photography, and mixed media to craft striking visual narratives that challenge societal norms. A graduate of Texas State University, Dave began his career in graphic design and established himself as a go-to talent for impactful branding and logo design projects. His expertise spans branding, illustration, digital design, and fine art, allowing him to create cohesive visual narratives that resonate with diverse audiences. Central to McClinton's artistic work is his dedication to addressing the erasure and misrepresentation of Black stories in mainstream historical narratives. McClinton's pieces are distinguished by their ability to juxtapose beauty with tension, inviting viewers to reflect on themes of systemic injustice, resilience, and cultural pride. Through his innovative use of digital and traditional techniques, he constructs a dialogue between past and present, challenging audiences to confront uncomfortable truths while celebrating the vibrancy and strength of Black communities. He has exhibited his work in galleries and institutions across the country, earning acclaim for his thought-provoking approach to contemporary art. Whether through exhibitions, public talks, or collaborations, McClinton continues to inspire critical conversations about race, identity, and the transformative power of art. Please join me in welcoming Dave McClinton.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I would first like to thank Peter because he invited me to participate in a couple of things outside of the book. You saw the gallery show, and invited me also to help judge the winners of a student show. And that sort of collaboration and partnership and friendship, frankly, is something that I didn't know was going to happen when I became an artist. I didn't know I was going to make friends. I thought I was just going to do what I do. And in the design world, you sort of you present things, you try to sell your idea, then you move on to the next thing because it's a business. But art feels a little different. And I want to thank you for that, for making me feel welcome. So I really appreciate it. So I think, so the slides came from, I'm creating a book for myself, a self-published book. So that's where these slides came from. We're not going to get through all of them because there's like 90 slides. I'm not going to drag you through that. But also don't necessarily worry about paying attention to the words. I'm just going to sort of explain the how and the why I got here. So as Peter said, I'm a graphic designer. Been doing that did the math, 30 years. Yeah, see, Russell's got a funny look on his face. 30 years of design work, and I always thought, when I was in school, I took half art classes, half design classes, and I didn't know what I was going to be when I graduated. I chose the practical route, but I always thought, at some point, I'm going to come back to art. I would always tell myself that. 20 years later, I finally did. Been showing work since 2015. And how it got started, it was kind of an accident. So I would grab images and play with them. I'd set a kitchen timer, set it for 30 minutes, and just play around with things whenever I had a creative block. And then when that timer went off, flatten the Photoshop file, throw it away, move on and do actual work. Every now and then, something cool would happen. some cool image that I thought was worth hanging on to. I wasn't thinking of it as art yet, though. It was just playing around. And then slowly but surely, I started creating images that I thought, wow, like that looks kind of cool. Maybe that could say something. Maybe that could be something. And it was an interesting time. It was right around 2011, 2012, where the country itself became acutely aware of the criminal justice injustice, police brutality. Those two things started happening around the same time. And I started trying to think about, why am I doing this? I need a reason to make the art, because it needs to come from a place of passion, a place of purpose. At least that's the way I view it. Some people make art just because it's beautiful, and that's perfectly fine too. So these names were in my head: Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Philando Castile. And I started thinking, okay, that's a reason I need to get off my butt and use my talent, my creativity to speak to what it's like being Black in America. And what hit me like a ton of bricks was that I already had a list of names in my head that were already there way before Black Lives Matter. And the shame that brought about was almost paralyzing. That I should have been doing this all along. I should have been using my art and creativity all along to speak to the names that go all the way back to Emmett Till. You know, I remember reading about Emmett Till when I was 7 in Jet magazine and Ebony magazine. And somehow the inertia of life, you just push these passions and good reasons aside. But luckily, I got over it. Luckily for my own soul, I got over it and started finding real world heroes. Now, when I was in second grade, one of the worst times of my life, I had probably the worst racist teacher in the world. She would go outside, she would go on a smoke break, she would come back, and the whole class, we're all 7, right? So of course we're all talking. But she would walk up to me, put tape over my mouth, and drag my desk out into the hallway. And in that hallway, do you see the gentleman at the very top poking his head around? He was the janitor at that school. This was Lone Star Elementary in New Braunfels, Texas. And I begged him not to tell my mom, because I just thought I'd keep that to myself for some reason. And he started telling me stories. He started telling me stuff he had to go through. And I started thinking about, wow, when he was 7, if I'm going through what I'm going through now, what must it have been like 50 years ago? So I had all these heroes, all these people that I could look up to. And you see the girl kind of play choking? That's my mom being choked at the very end over there. Just want to point out my mother. So this is the church. I was baptized in this church. I grew up and a lot of these people were in their 60s and 70s by the time I came around. So I started thinking about the heroes, the people that I looked up to, the people that had been through stuff way worse than I would ever go through. And using my process, I undid the shackles of the time constraint. I had gotten really good at Photoshop. I'd just be doing that exercise over and over again. I got really good at it. So that became my medium. It was super simple to stop work, stay at the desk, and start making work right there. And actually, let me go back. So I'm going to explain a little bit of how the work is made. So it's digital collage. So I started with family photos. I would take an eye from a source, a mouth from a source, um, different textural photos to create the body and the clothes and the hair. So these faces that you see are completely invented faces. These aren't real people. And right around the time I started doing this, I discovered uh, Deborah Roberts' work, and I had to quickly change style because I was like, uh-oh, that's a pretty similar, pretty similar look and feel. And that actually helped me because it helped me focus my voice to see that, oh, I can't just throw stuff out there. I've got to be cognizant of what other people are doing too. I don't want to step on toes. I don't want to mimic anyone. So it helped me sharpen my focus. It was actually a really good thing. The other things I would focus on were actual history that wasn't being talked about. I've always looked up old slave advertisements and runaway slave ads. Um, I was always staggered by the clinical way humans were described. I remember seeing a list that things for sale. It was a wagon, wheelbarrow, and a buck. That was for sale. So I thought, well, we're not going to hide that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to use it in our art. So I started using those materials to help tell a story. And this is a list of, basically it's an inventory list of people. And it has their attributes of whether or not they're young enough to keep working, whether or not they're young enough to bear children, which is like your product is making more product. That's where some of those details come from. This is a great example of trying to use history and my own emotional state to tell a story. So this was a young boy his name is George Stinney. He was convicted of a crime he didn't commit and executed really quickly. He was 14 years old. So I took the outline of his head and used childhood photos of myself and my cousins to create work. You'll see it's the same shape, the same position, as a way to sort of spiritually tell George, I'm sorry that happened to you. And to express a little bit of guilt in the notion that if I were born 50 years sooner, or if he were born 50 years later, he wouldn't have had to go through something like that. So that's where I've started. So now my work is becoming really emotional, and I'm starting to find my voice. This is probably 2019, probably. And I'm starting to get momentum. I'm starting to feel really good about what my work is saying. So the other things I like to do are manipulate elements of, could be considered symbols of oppression. And I started to worry about, okay, am I celebrating that? Am I showing it in a way that feels flippant, that feels dismissive of the trauma that was created during those times? And I decided that no one else gets to determine my intent. If it's my heart's in the right place making the work, then I'm gonna feel good about the work. So, but believe me, I stayed up late nights thinking if this was appropriate imagery to show. And again, every face you see is invented. Like that person doesn't exist. It was an eye from a place, a nose from a place. Sometimes a self-portraiture of my own nose if I can't find the right angle. So this is you're seeing invented people. So you can't make art that's inspired by the criminal justice system and police brutality without referencing lynching. It's impossible. And I came across a photo years ago of a young boy who had been lynched, and this was before the mutilation happened. And it occurred to me that if you remove the handcuffs and remove the rope, what you have is a young black boy in a suit thinking about his future, thinking about his life. So again, this is a way to, for me as an artist, to access that pain, access that anger, and channel it through work that I'm hoping people will ask me questions about. We can have conversations about these things. Um, Again, this goes back to the previous work. Should I be showing this? Should I use that as a platform? Should I use that as a source? And I decided it's coming from a place of wanting to communicate. It's coming from a place of seeking empathy. So I dismissed any sort of guilt or misgivings I may have had and continued down that path. So a little bit of, so obviously you see the money reference. You see a photo of a pattern of my grandmother's couch. You see some pants I wore as a kid. My mom dressed me up in plaid pants a lot. I don't know why. So these are just photos and childhood photos that I'm pulling this information from. And again, invented faces, my own hands. I couldn't find hands that I liked, so I just took photos of my own hands. And each piece probably takes, I don't know, there's probably 40 or 50 photos per piece. And they take around, about 40 hours or so to create each piece. Now that is, sometimes I put them aside and don't come back to them for a while and I come back to them, but still that's roughly the average. I've always liked the mug shots from the 20s. They showed people from head to toe, mostly, and he looks like a distinguished gentleman, but he's a criminal. Now, the idea that when they show, and I'll say us, I think you'll know who I'm talking about when I say us. When they show us in mugshots, it's completely different. There's no grace at all. So to me, there's a little bit of humor and a little bit of a smartass in me, and I like to subvert images and put a little twist on things. So if it weren't for this talk, you would see this piece and you wouldn't know that the clothes came from a mugshot from the 20s. But I don't always explain everything. Sometimes I feel like, a songwriter doesn't necessarily want to tell you what the song's about because they want you to interpret the song the way you interpret it. So I don't always share the details. It's sort of kind of a bit of an in joke for myself. So this is what it can look like to start. So shape of a head, a photo of a concrete wall, and I just start building it bit by bit. Again, I'm showing some source material here. So there's a walkway, buffalo nickel, my own mouth as a 20-year-old, plants, bathroom graffiti, an old sort of linen curtain. And when I'm taking these photos or I'm capturing these images, I don't always know how I'm going to use them. Generally, I have a folder full of like 200, 300 images, and I just sort of comb through it looking for things that I feel like will help me tell the story of the person I'm trying to create. So there's There's often work that feels overtly antagonistic. There's work that feels like I'm trying to start a fight with some imagery like this. And I was participating in an art show, an art fair in Dallas, Texas in 2019. And when you're doing that, you're facing the crowd and your art's behind you. And I knew where this piece was. It was right over my left shoulder. And I would watch people's faces as they walked by. They would look at me, oh, lovely, nice to see your work, thank you. And then they'd see that piece and stop. Like, uh-oh, here we go. So depending on their age, they would either keep it moving or nod at me or stop and want us to have some sort of conversation. Often an argument, kind of. So after those conversations, I remember thinking there was a white woman about 65. She walked away. We'd had a conversation. And I thought to myself, we never would have talked to each other. If I had seen her on the street, she wouldn't have talked to me. I wouldn't have talked to her. But because of art, we talked about race and the justice system for about 20 minutes. And I thought, oh, that's what it's for. That's why I'm doing this, to create spaces for those conversations. And that's right around the time that I feel like I really truly landed about 5 years ago. Okay, now I know what I'm doing. Now I've landed on something. I've landed on a narrative. I've landed on a way to talk about my work. And I've always felt like it needed a purpose, and that was my purpose. And part of that purpose is people always ask me, do you want an angry reaction, or do you want guilt, or what are you looking for? What I'm actually looking for is empathy. I don't need you to feel bad about my situation. I don't need you to feel bad about any potential ancestors you may have had that have done anything. I need you to simply understand that we're all going through something. Simply understand that my anger is justified and not necessarily directed at anyone. My anger is sort of directed at the situation, not an actual person. And that's been my sort of guiding light of allow my emotions to flow, allow my emotions to be in the work, and accept whatever reaction happens. If it's anger, if it's some sort of brotherly understanding, whatever it is, I can't fault that person for how they've reacted when they saw the work. And as I said, I have 90 slides. I'm not going to drag you through it, but I have to admit, seeing my work on a really big screen is cool. So I'm at 20 minutes. I'm just going to click a few more. So I really like the notion of don't touch my hair. So I took a photo of I used a photo of an underwater mine to create the hair. Again, my own humor. Those were paper Richard Nixon dresses handed out during the campaign. So I'm using it as a vestment for a young black man on my own version of the American flag. And I think, let me circle around and try to put a button on it. I think most artists are looking for validation. They're looking for acceptance. I'm no different. They're looking for a reaction. They're looking for a way to let the art leap over a gap between people in society. Again, I always think about that woman in Dallas. I never would have talked to her. She never would have talked to me, but art caused that conversation to happen. And I think that's why, a huge reason of why I do what I do. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I guess we'll do some Q&A.
So we'll run questions and answers. We are recording this, and so if you have a question, please raise your hand, and I'll bring the mic out to you so that way your question is recorded. Are you gonna do it? Okay, great. Debbie's gonna do it. Maybe I'll. Do you want me to start off with a question? And if you have questions about anything, about the book, about Dave's work, Dave's our guest tonight, so it's a great opportunity to ask him questions. One of the things it struck me this time looking at your work, and it's so great to see some of the behind the scenes part, like the depth charge was actually pretty great. It makes complete sense when you see it. Every portrait, I think we can call them portraits, in your work, they are so lifelike. They're very engaging, and I think they're engaging on the screen, but when you see the work in person, it's also very the eyes, the expressions, they are very lifelike, and you do kind of form your own dialogue with the people that are being portrayed, even though they aren't specific people. After working with the images for a while, do they become specific people to you? And do you like, I don't want to call them characters because I don't know, you know what I'm trying to get at. It's like this idea that like you've created unique new people that are some ways maybe archetypes, or some ways I know they also sometimes are self-portraits, sometimes they reference family members. So just that kind of relationship you have with this growing body of portraits.
They are characters. Is not a bad word at all, because I am telling a story after all, or at least I'd like to think that I am. It's interesting that we stopped on this piece. So because I'm pulling images from different sources, things that are obviously male, obviously female get mixed together in the piece I'm working on. And I have no agenda around any of that. So sometimes someone will look at a piece and refer to it as her, or refer to the piece as him. Like, tell me about him, tell me about her. And sometimes it throws me off because I'm like, oh, I don't think I applied either one of those labels to that. It was just a piece, it was just a work. So they become people, I think, when that happens. When someone asks me a question or refers to it in such a way that, oh, they just gave them an identity. Even though I created it, the person looked at it, gave them identity through their question, through their reaction to it. So they do sort of take a life of their own. And there have been times I've created work, and the only time I printed it out was to give it to a buyer. So it's gone. I don't even see it anymore. I see the digital version, but there have been times I'm looking at the piece on my table for about 15 minutes, roll it up, put it in a tube, it's gone. I gotta start keeping some of these. I do feel attached to them, absolutely. And sometimes I do say, she's gone, or she, he got taken. So, yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciated your presentation, and obviously some really nice works. I noticed that there is particular attention, at least from what I'm seeing, to the lips. And then there's also a difference in some of the pictures of the pigment. And I'm just wondering, can you talk a little bit more about what was behind the thought of the coloration, maybe in some cases, really kind of highlighting certain aspects? Thanks.
Absolutely. So one of the things I forgot to mention is part of what I'm representing is a reaction to Western beauty standards. So on almost every photo or almost every image, you're going to see the nose and the mouth are outsized. Particularly, the thing I think about all the time is that's why Philando Castile was pulled over in the first place. He was pulled over because he had a wide set nose and he matched the description. So that's something I I like to call attention to. And then there's always, like I said, there's always sort of in jokes to myself, kind of. So the eyes, I'll use coins. There's something called uh, the minstrel circuit in the early 10s and 20s. They were illegal, so they couldn't have tickets. So the way they did tickets was they took an actual coin and struck the name of the minstrel show into the coin. So if you got caught with the coin, you just had a coin. You didn't have a ticket to a show you weren't supposed to go to. But they used that coin as a way of entrance into the show. And I use those coins a lot for eyes. So yeah, that sort of thing. Again, if someone asks me, I'm glad to tell them, but there's so much meaning embedded in some of the little details that it's almost like what were those magazines in doctor's offices where you had to look and find the things? You know what I'm talking about? That's what the art starts to feel like. So, yeah, it's a lot, and sometimes it's overdone, but a lot of it's just kind of for my own entertainment sometimes. Well, I'm just gonna keep clicking through images if I'm not gonna. Okay, here we go.
You mentioned that, at least partly what propelled you to start paying attention to your creativity was shame. And later you talked about, you used the word guilt as well. And it struck me that we are in a time, we're talking about the importance of truth, when some states are, and also like the federal government, for military, the rule just, I don't know, something got signed recently that we don't want to teach anything that makes white kids feel ashamed or guilty. So I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
All right, rein it in. Rein it in. Don't say anything horrible. So I think that is trying to keep that from people, trying to keep those books from people is a fool's errand when you consider the internet. And it's so easy for those kids that are not having access to books, they're going to find that stuff anyway. I think that because of that, music, art, comic books, everything is going to have to be the vehicle to leapfrog some of the academic structures that are trying to bury those things, trying to ban those books and things like that. So the notion that that information is just going to get wiped off the face of the earth, they can try, but there are so many artists, so many musicians, so many writers, so many people speaking to those things that it feels like I'm just happy I'm on this side of it when in terms of the right side of history. I don't know if I actually answered your question. Okay.
Hi, I just have a question kind of about process. So with the digital collages that you make, there's a lot of historical archives included. So I'm curious how you balance the kind of making of your artwork versus the research side of things. Do you just kind of set time aside? Do you have like a folder of all these different archived material that you want to use? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, a lot of the work, a lot of the sources have come from the Library of Congress. Everything I try to source, if it's not a photo I've taken or a photo that for my family that I own, I make sure that it's license free, and I'm probably just going to use an ear from it anyway. But it's not that terrible an issue. In terms of the archival imagery, I feel like I kind of said what I needed to say from 18 to 19 using those materials. I don't know that I would necessarily go back to it, but yes, described exactly as you just asked. There's a folder of 200 or 300 images. And there's an artist named Nancy Sparrow who used shapes and figures, and she repeated their use over and over again. And I love her work, and she's kind of just her existence has sort of given me, I feel like, permission to go back to the well every now and then, to go back and revisit a shape, revisit a figure. But yeah, there are so many more files than I'll ever find time to put in art.
Kind of a follow up to that, because that was very much a question I was thinking about, and thinking about working in the digital space and in your computer, essentially in your head, in your computer. Are there also printouts that you're on taping on a wall, like things that you go back to? When we do exhibitions, a lot of times I'll print out little images of everything, so you kind of keep remembering things. You're like, oh yeah, we got to talk about this, and we have to have this work in dialogue with that, thing. So do you also kind of take things out of those folders and kind of throw them kind of on the table, so to speak?
Yeah, to some degree I do. I have several screens open at the same time. I have like 4 different laptop plus 3 screens. So I'll have those materials open. But I also have, so another thing I didn't mention is these things are built much bigger than they'll ever be. Most of the pieces that people collect are 3 feet tall by 2 feet wide, but they're built to be 8 feet tall by 6 feet wide. They're built to be huge. And an inch in the file is an inch in reality. So when I zoom in to look at that eye, it's like that on my screen. So I have several pieces of art on the wall just as a reference to tell myself, okay, this is 6 feet wide, that's 4 feet, to try to live in that world of trying to make it real for myself, so I can ascertain just how big the figure is going to be. Because I work digitally, I don't have a studio. My studio is my home. My studio could be a coffee shop. So I do have to keep very aware of reference and size so I can create something that makes sense. So yeah, I do that a lot.
We have time for one more question, so I'm going to give it to this gentleman here, and then we got to wrap up.
All right. Curious. We've talked hundreds of times, but I've never asked this. What comes first? Is it the narrative? What starts the beginning process of a project?
It's so there's this advice about creative blocks that I've always liked from a writer, and that writer said, I believe it was, I want to say it was Salinger, that said he doesn't necessarily sit down at the typewriter with an idea. He just starts writing. So I've taken that to be, that's what I do. Maybe I grab a couple of images. Maybe I have a shot of whiskey. Maybe I have hip hop playing. Maybe I have jazz playing. And I just open up an empty Photoshop file, just a big empty square, and I just start messing about. I grab a foot, I grab a head, I grab a torso, and I pull these things together, and then I look for a narrative once the piece has been started. There are times where I decide, oh, I want to represent this person to a T. And I've started pieces wanting to represent an aunt or an uncle in my family. So it's kind of 50-50. Sometimes I start with an idea, sometimes I let the idea just erupt while I'm playing.
Thank you. Well, can we give a round of applause for Dave and for Peter? Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate that you came to support library services and the art gallery. I hope that you have time in your week. And if not, you can go to another library, but ours is right downstairs. So I hope you have time in your week to come see the display that we put up to represent this event. And thank you again for coming out. Don't forget the art galleries at the HLC too. So go give them a visit. Bye.